We are learning to recognise and use prefixes to help decode and understand words. What is a prefix? A prefix are some letters that we add to the front of a word, which then changes its meaning. So an example of a prefix is re. When we put re in front of a word, it changes its meaning, so it means to do again. So for example, we might have the word remade. So it means to make again. So when we look at that word, we can recognise the prefix re and read that, and then read the base word made to make the word remade. Another example would be repaint. That would mean to paint again. So when we get to this word, when we're reading, we'd recognise that prefix and say re, and then read the base word paint. Another example is reread, which means to read again. So again, if we were reading, we would see the re and say that, and then we would say the next part of the word, which is read, to make the word reread. Another example of a prefix is D. When you hear and see the word D in front of a word, the prefix D, that means to do the take away from. So for example, you might have the word declaw, and that means to cut the claws off an animal. So when we read it, we would read D and then claw. Another example of the prefix D is deduct, and that means to take some money away. So we'd read D and then duct to make the word deduct. And another example of the prefix D is the word decompose, and that means for leaves and things like that to rot away. So if you saw this word when you were reading, you would recognise the prefix D and then read the word compose. Another prefix that you might come across when you're reading is pro. And examples, that pro means in favour of. So examples of words with this prefix in it might be promote. That means that someone goes up in their job. So when you'd read it, you'd read pro, see that prefix, and then mote. Another one for pro might be progress. And another one is proceed. So when you're reading these words, see if you can recognise the prefixes and read those first. Another prefix that you might come across when you're reading, you might see these three letters that say the prefix pre, like the word prepare or prevent or pre-made. When we put the suffix pre in front of a word, it means that we're getting ready for something. We're preparing ahead of time. So when you're reading and you see pre at the start of a word, you can start by saying pre and then read the base word. And a final prefix that you might come across when you're reading is the prefix intro, like with the word introduction or introduce. So when you're reading these words, as soon as you recognise this prefix, you can say intro and then look at the base word and then read that as well. I hope this helps you today with reading words, seeing if you can recognise the prefix at the start of the word and saying that first, and then thinking about what that prefix means and how it changes the meaning of the word.